Yo, what it do, YouTube? It's your boy ColtsTalk. We are back on another video. We are back officially. No more vacay. So we here dropping some more content. Not a lot to really talk about, due to the Colts just being purely bad at football. But to be honest, it's not the worst scenario for the Colts to be bad at football. Because, when you look at it in the future perspective for the Indianapolis Colts, you kind of want them to lose these games at this point. At first, they were being competitive, and it's not about them being just bad at football. It's just at the point that they're not good enough to win. Because all of these games that they're in, they're pretty much competitive. They're dogfights, just flat out dogfights. But they just, in general, can't seem to win the game. And that's a good sign for the Colts moving forward into the future, because as the time starts to dwindle down in the regular season, you start to get a bigger picture of what your team is looking like moving forward. And for the Colts, as it's been for years, they always had a solid defense, and they continue to have that. And they've been building that, which is another bright thing. Even with the pieces they moved, they still found a way to be a top 12 defense, or top 15 at least, in the NFL. And this defense has been showing up day in and day out, week in and week out, on a weekly basis. But unfortunately, if you want to use the last game as an example, the Dallas Cowboys pretty much flat out destroyed them. It wasn't really solely on the Colts defense. I think we all know the biggest issue of why the Colts can't win games is because of this offense. It all started at the beginning of the season when we tied with the Houston Texans. You started to question this team after week 1 when you tied with the Texans. You were like, something's not right here. And, you kind of seen it last year going into the season. The way the last year ended, it was just terrible. And then going into this year, it just didn't get any better. When you got in the offseason, you waited till the last minute to get a quarterback because you didn't know what scenario you wanted to do. If you didn't want to trade up in the draft to get a QB out the draft, or, you were waiting on the Deshaun Watson scenario to end, the Baker Mayfield situation, all these things transpired into your situation that the Colts were going through, and they didn't have a franchise QB. So all of these things pretty much hindered the next move that the Colts wanted to do. And then you look at the free agency, it's like a lot of talent was there, but none of these free agents know what the Colts mindset is moving forward into the season. So it doesn't look like a popular destination. Now, of course, the Colts did go out there and get some players like a Stephon Gilmore of that nature, a Yannick Ngakoue via trade. But to be honest, there was a lot of talent in free agency. But if I'm a free agent and you see that, the Indianapolis Colts offer a contract, and you see that they don't have a franchise QB, and that they don't, and we got our QB after the draft. So, this was a huge question mark going forward, with all that talent that was out there. I mean, of course, with Ballard out there in the negotiations and Irsay, you know how they are with contracts and money. So it's like you can't really win over free agent talent, and you don't even know what your vision is for the next season. Now, of course, they come out here with the mindset of, all chips in, let's go, try to make a run to the playoffs. Let's try to win a Super Bowl. But the roster just doesn't show it. It's just that simple. Of course, you made the moves on the defensive side, and the defense was never an issue. The issue was always the offense. And this year, the offense just got significantly worse. Jonathan Taylor still has this fumbling issue. He can't seem to hit the holes like he used to as well. Matt Ryan just terrible performance all year. He had his few bright spots, but so did the last few QBs we had before him and before his time. They all had their moments, and they all stink at the end of the day. Matt Ryan's old. He can't really move. He's not mobile. He can't move out the pocket. So all these defenses we go up against is pretty much pressing up and blitzing, forcing him to throw the deep ball, in which he can't do. So, I mean, that's just not significant. We drafted Alec Pierce. He had flashes, but he's not stepping into his own fully. I mean, he's still a solid wide receiver. Don't get me wrong. I think if, next year he's going to come out, he's going to be a dog. But other than that, we gave away Pascal. We didn't go out and get another tight end. We got Marley Cox. We paid him. He's our tight end 1. Kyler Granton's showing up a few bits. Jelani Woods is stepping up a little bit. All of this talent that we have on the receiving group for the Colts is young, and they got to develop. So it's going to take time. Paris Campbell has had a healthy season. He's stepping into his own. So the Colts, mindset is literally for the future in my eyes. In my eyes, it was definitely a future development for this team, and it's pretty much for this season. The mindset is, who are you going to keep and who are you going to move at this point of the year, because it's pretty much wrapped up. The teams that are making the playoffs are pretty much, not developing, but the teams that are going to make the playoffs are pretty much in playoff mode already, and the teams that aren't are pretty much focusing on the draft. You kind of seen it with this Houston Texans and Cowboys game. I think everybody thought the Texans was going to win, and the way that the Texans ended that game is pretty much showing you how poorly they're showing their vision of tanking. It's terrible, because a lot of teams don't like to go out and admit that they're tanking. They still want to be competitive, and I feel like the Colts are one of those teams. But in all honesty, we already knew we weren't winning the division by week 6, so it is what it is at the end of the day. But for this team, like I said, the defense has shown up. We're still missing pass rush. But besides the secondary, they're still good, but they're not healthy. Nobody's healthy on this team. This team is still injury prone. We lost Shaquille Leonard for the season. Kenny Moore's been banged up. The safeties, they're finally healthy after the year, but we still was missing Julian Blackmon for a majority of the season. Rodney Thomas stepped up. The backup stepped up in general, and that's a huge thing moving forward about, like I said earlier, who you want to keep and who you want to move. But for this Colts team, you definitely have to look forward to this draft in this offseason. Like, this is probably the last chance. Of course, you got next season as well, because next year's draft is going to be just as good, probably better. But this year's draft is definitely a hit or miss. You got to get a quarterback this draft. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We can't go in this quarterback carousel all over again, because that rodeo is pretty much over. And they mentioned it, Ursay and Ballard mentioned it as well. But, at this point, like, who are we going to believe? Because they say one thing, and then, it's just a whole nother scenario. And then, this season as well, they fired Frank Reich, and then they hired Jeff Saturday out of nowhere. It's just been a terrible roller coaster season as a Colts fan to watch. But again, this is all moving forward. This is all a positive sign, because next year, you can get a new GM if you want to move from there. You can get a new head coach, because this was a temporary head coach for this season to finish it out. Get a new GM, get a new head coach, get a quarterback out the draft, get another left tackle, or a right guard, a right tackle, whatever you want to do. Get some offensive linemen out the draft. Get some more edge rush. And, you can actually have a better season next year than you did this year. So all of this is pretty much moving forward, is focusing on next season. And I think it's a good mindset to have as a Colts fan, to understand that they're going to be competitive, but you will want to probably maybe lose out some more games to get a higher draft odd to get a quarterback that's going to be a franchise QB for your team for the next upcoming season. And that should be the mindset moving forward in general, is looking for a franchise QB. Of course, we had our chances of being successful without a franchise QB. For example, Phillip Rivers was probably the best person to fill in that role, to not have a franchise QB, but at least still be competitive. Of course, we didn't get it done because we played a talented Bills team who's actually even better this year. But in general, I think, Phillip Rivers was the best piece. But other than that, they just never seem to recover. And I think, that's going to be a hinder on the team. But obviously, this should be a sign moving forward that the Colts can still be competitive, but do not get your hopes up. You should be focusing on the draft of who you want to get at your QB position. If you got to trade up, if you got to trade away pieces, that should be the focus for this team right now. Because it shows you on a week-to-week basis when they go out there and still have Matt Ryan as starting quarterback. It shows you what they're doing. So it is what it is at the end of the day. You guys let me know your thoughts about this team and how they performed this season, and who would you want out the draft. Let me know all these things in the comment section. This is Marcus, and until next time, you've been Culture Shock.